Hi, everybody. I have just completed all of the Letter C Learn a Hall of Famer shorts about every Letter C Hall of Famer. There were 23 of them, which is fourth most in the Hall of Fame alphabetically. This is just a compilation of all 23 of them together for a binge viewing. So sit down, lay back, or fall asleep to some information about every Letter C Hall of Famer. In October of 1945, an all-black all-star team organized an exhibition series with the Brooklyn Dodgers. Roy Campanella, the star player of that team, was approached by Dodgers GM Branch Rickey a few months later for an opportunity to play on the Dodgers. And after a 4-hour meeting, Campanella declined the offer because he thought it was for another Negro League team. When Campy met up with Jackie Robinson after the fact and Robinson told him that he signed with the Dodgers of the National League, Campanella quickly realized his error and frantically shot a telegram to the Dodgers stating his interest to play for them. And thankfully, the Dodgers listened, unknowingly signing one of the best catchers in MLB history. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at our first Letter C Hall of Famer and the 6th African American to play in the major leagues, Roy Campanella. Campy was born November 19th, 1921 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Fun fact, he does not have a middle name. Now, Roy Campanella was the product of an interracial marriage, which was a relatively new thing still in the United States, and the young boys of all races made sure that he knew it, calling him things like half-breed. But he did not take those insults lying down. He quickly learned to fight and even competed in the Golden Gloves boxing for a little bit. Campanella discovered his talent for baseball in high school when he was the captain of the football, basketball, and baseball team, but it was baseball that stole his heart and his determination. He would actually be invited to try out for the Phillies, but that offer was quickly rescinded when they found out that he was black. He would promptly quit school and sign with the elite giants of the Negro National Leagues at the age of just 15 years old. And after 8 years in the Negro Leagues, 1 year of domestic World War II service, 2 years in the minor leagues, Roy Campanella would finally debut in the major leagues, still only at the age of 26. Roy Campanella played in the Negro Leagues from 1937 to 1945 for the elite giants and stars, and he played in the MLB from 1948 to 1957 for the Brooklyn Dodgers. He bat and threw righty, he played catcher, he bat .283 for his career average, scoring 786 runs with 1,420 hits, driving in 1,019 RBIs, and swatting 260 home runs. 41.8 WAR, .0288 WAR per game, 125 OPS plus, and a 380 advanced on base average. Campanella was most well known for his knack for barrier and record breaking. As said in the intro, he is the 6th acknowledged African American to play in the MLB. He was also the 2nd ever black player to win an MVP behind Jackie Robinson, and he was the first black player to ever win 2 MVPs, and then he just decided to show everybody up and win 3 MVPs. But even at the age of 17, he was flashing potential, challenging Josh Gibson for the spot of best catcher in the Negro Leagues. With his crazy success in his mid-teens all the way to manning the Dodgers catcher role for a decade, Roy Campanella was an extraordinary baseball player. Roy Campanella was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1969, winning 79.4% of the vote on his 7th ballot. He passed away June 26, 1993 in Woodland Hills, California. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. MLB Hall of Famer Rod Carew always found a way to get hits. Whether it was taking a high inside pitch and taking it to left field, or slapping an outside pitch down the line for a double. But he had been going with the flow since his literal birth, as he was born on a moving train heading to central Panama. He didn't need a hospital, he just went with the flow and took the opportunity that was given to him. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the Minnesota Twin with the highest WAR for position players, Rod Carew. As mentioned in the intro, Carew was born October 1st, 1945 on the move in the Gatun Canal Zone in Panama, but his parents were actually heading to a hospital in Ancon, Panama. Now, his relationship with his father was broken, so his mother took him and his brother Dickie and immigrated to New York. Rod didn't start playing baseball immediately, as his priority was to learn English and get good grades. But 2 years after his immigration to the US, he would join the New York Cavaliers of the Bronx Federation League, where he would attract the attention of a bird dog scout for the Minnesota Twins. So the Minnesota Twins arranged a tryout for Carew, where he sprayed hits all over the field, earning himself a contract with a $5,000 signing bonus and $400 a month. Rod Carew played in the MLB from 1967 to 1985 for the Twins and Angels. He bat lefty and threw righty. He played second and first base. He bat .328 for his career average, scoring 1,424 runs with 3,053 hits, driving in 1,015 RBIs, and winning 7 batting titles. 81.2 WAR, .0329 WAR per game, 131 OPS plus, and a 380 .85 advanced on-base average. Rod Carew was most well known for his top-tier hitting ability. He led the league in batting 7 times, and in the history of Major League Baseball, only Ty Cobb, Honus Wagner, and Tony Gwynn have led the league more times. He had a 15-year streak of batting over 300. He was also the 16th player in MLB history to eclipse the 3,000 hit mark and the 27th player to be inducted into the Hall of Fame on their first ballot. But that wasn't the only award he would win. He was given the Order of Vasco Nunez de Balboa, which is an award given to a Panamanian who displays great diplomacy and contributes to international relationships with other countries. It is the highest award a Panamanian can receive. Rod Carew was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1991, winning 90.5% of the vote on his first ballot. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. In the middle of the 1910 season, Max Carey was bought by the Pittsburgh Pirates, and on his first day he jogged on out to shortstop, the position he hoped he would be playing. But if we know our Pittsburgh Pirates history, who would have came out and greeted the green rookie at the shortstop position? None other than the great Honus Wagner, who had to control his temper and go talk to his manager about his position being usurped. Later on, Carey and Wagner would actually have a good friendship, but their relationship sure got off to a rocky start. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the fastest Pittsburgh Pirate of all time, Max Carey. Carey was born January 11th, 1890 in Terre Haute, Indiana. His parents wanted to raise their son to learn great discipline, so they enrolled him in a pre-seminary program at the age of 13. And it was there that he became a great athlete, turning out to be a great swimmer and quite the runner. He then graduated from the program and went to Concordia Seminary in St. Louis to become a Lutheran minister. But his skills in baseball were good enough to join the Concordia team and the South Bend team of the Central League. He then dropped out of seminary when he knew his baseball career was secured. And in 1910, he was purchased by the Pittsburgh Pirates of the National League. Max Carey played in the MLB from 1910 to 1929 for the Pittsburgh Pirates and Brooklyn Dodgers. He switch hit and threw righty. He played left field and right field. He bat .285 for his career average, scoring 1,545 runs with 2,665 hits, driving in 802 RBIs while stealing 738 bases. 55.6 WAR, .0225 WAR per game, 108 OPS plus, and a 366 advanced on-base average. Max Carey was most well known for his great agility and speed, which led him to becoming the all-time Pittsburgh Pirates stolen bases leader ahead of Honus Wagner. In fact, he ranks 9th all-time in stolen bases ahead of guys such as Joe Morgan, Kenny Lofton, and Otis Nixon. But he had some sneaky dead ball power as he finished top 3 in the Pirates in home runs for 7 seasons. Carey was also part of the Great Pirate Mutiny, as it was known, when he, as the team's captain, tried to get Fred Clark kicked out of the dugout. Now, Fred Clark was the former manager for the Pirates, but Max Carey became the fall guy and he got suspended and then waived by the Pirates, eventually being picked up by the Brooklyn Dodgers. But the story has a good ending when Carey was invited back to be a coach for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Max Carey was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1961 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away May 30th, 1976 at the age of 86 in Miami, Florida. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. February 25th, 1972, Steve Carlton is traded to the Philadelphia Phillies for Rick Wise. A real good one for a real good one is what Carlton's catcher in St. Louis, Tim McCarver, said about the deal. But Carlton was so angry that the Cardinals would trade him that he called the head of the Players Association and asked what could be done about the deal. He was given 2 options, retire or accept the trade. And I think I can speak for all baseball fans outside of the 4,136 batters that he struck out that we are all very thankful that he decided to play. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at one of the greatest strikeout artists in MLB history, Steve Carlton. Carlton was born December 22nd, 1944 in Miami, Florida. As a teenager, Carlton became fascinated with Eastern philosopher Paramahansa Yogananda, who believed that you could achieve greatness in life through meditation. In high school, Carlton was a great athlete. He could throw a football 75 yards, excel on the pitcher's mound, and outjump most centers in basketball. He wasn't very interested in school or college, but his talents in baseball were good enough to get signed by the St. Louis Cardinals in October of 1963, kicking off his legendary career on the mound. Steve Carlton played in the MLB from 1965 to 1988 for the Cardinals, Phillies, Giants, White Sox, Indians, and Twins. He bat and threw lefty. He had a .322 ERA, a 1.247 WHIP, a career record of 329 and 244, and 4,136 strikeouts, while winning 4 Cy Youngs. 90.2 WAR, .156 WAR per 9 innings pitched, 115 ERA plus, and a 3. 1.15 FIP. Now, Carlton was most well known for his great dance moves, but Steve Carlton was most well known for his nasty strikeout ability. He ranks 4th all-time with 4,136 strikeouts and is one of just 4 pitchers with over 4,000 strikeouts. He is also 11th all-time in wins with 329 and 9th all-time in innings pitched with 5,217 and 2/3 innings. Carlton is one of just 2 pitchers ever with over 4,000 strikeouts, 300 wins, and 5,000 innings pitched alongside Nolan Ryan. He is also one of just 10 pitchers to be in both the 3,000 strikeout and 300 win clubs. Now, Steve Carlton was an introverted person who had some odd opinions, but you can arguably count on one hand how many pitchers were better than him in MLB history at the art of pitching. Steve Carlton was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1994, winning 95.6% of the vote on his first ballot. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. When Gary Carter was 6 years old, he began playing sports, and the very next year he would become the national champion in the first ever NFL-sponsored punt-pass-kick competition. When I was 6 years old, I was crying over not knowing how to properly take a spelling test in the first grade. I guess there's a reason Gary Carter is in the Hall of Fame and I am not. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the greatest Montreal Expo of all time, Gary Carter. Carter was born April 8th, 1954 in Culver City, California. And as mentioned in the intro, Carter became an athlete from the very moment that he possibly could be one, with his baseball career beginning at the age of 6 with Little League. Unfortunately, when he was 12 years old, he would lose his mother to a battle with cancer, but this would later motivate his philanthropic work. In high school, Carter was a 3-sport athlete, being the captain of the basketball, baseball, and football team at Sunny Hills High School. In fact, he was so good at football that he received over 100 scholarship offers to play football at the collegiate level, eventually signing a letter of intent with the UCLA Bruins. But as it often does, baseball finds a way when Gary Carter was told that if he took one more big hit to his knees, it could be career-ending, so he shifted his focus onto baseball. And despite playing just 6 games at catcher in high school, the Montreal Expos drafted Carter in 1972 and threw him behind the plate. Gary Carter played in the MLB from 1974 to 1992 for the Expos, Mets, Giants, and Dodgers. He bat and threw righty, he played catcher, he bat .262 for his career average, scoring 1,025 runs with 2,092 hits, driving in 1,225 RBIs while smacking 324 home runs. 70.1 WAR, .0305 WAR per game, 115 OPS plus, and a 355 advanced on base average. Kid, as he was known, was most well known for his all-around talent in the game of baseball. He is 4th all-time in catcher offensive WAR and 3rd all-time in catcher defensive WAR. He is the 2nd best catcher in MLB history according to both Jaws and WAR. He has the highest peak 7 WAR seasons at the catcher position of all time. But he's not just great among catchers. He has the 16th highest defensive WAR of all time. He has more home runs than Edgar Martinez and George Brett and is 69th all time in career WAR. He also helped lead the Mets to win their most recent World Series in 1985. He eventually had to retire due to his knees giving out, as most catchers' knees do. But all in all, Gary Carter is one of the best backstops to ever play the game of baseball. Gary Carter was elected into the Hall of Fame in 2003, winning 78% of the vote on his 6th ballot. He passed away February 16th, 2012 at the age of 57 in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. In 1978, Orlando Cepeda was sentenced to 5 years in prison for marijuana possession. I mean, he was practically shunned by the entire island of Puerto Rico after being a hero to them prior. Never in his wildest dreams did he think he would ever be standing in Cooperstown, New York, accepting his election into the MLB Hall of Fame. But he did just that 25 years after his final at-bat. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the jazz-loving, heavy-slugging Puerto Rican Cha-Cha Orlando Cepeda. Cepeda was born September 17, 1937 in Ponce, Puerto Rico. Orlando's father, Perucho, was an absolute legend in Puerto Rican baseball. I mean, he was nicknamed the Babe Cobb of Puerto Rico. Perucho refused many times to come over to the US and play in the Negro Leagues because he did not want to face the racial segregation there. Despite his success, he still earned little money and often gambled away what he did earn, causing Orlando to grow up in poverty. But Orlando credits his inherited baseball talent from his father from saving him out of a a life of crime and poverty. At age 15, he would suffer his first knee injury, pains that would last with him for his entire career and life. When he was 16 years old, he was scouted and sent for a tryout with the New York Giants. He was accompanied by a few other Islanders and MLB legend Roberto Clemente, who was on his way to spring training. He impressed greatly and signed a contract with the New York Giants that had a $500 signing bonus. Orlando Cepeda played in the MLB from 1958 to 1974 for the Giants, Cardinals, Braves, Athletics, Royals, and Red Sox. He bat and threw righty, he played first base, he bat .297 for his career average, scoring 1,131 runs with 2,351 hits, driving in 1,365 RBIs while clobbering 379 home runs. 50.2 WAR, .0236 WAR per game, 133 OPS plus, and a 383 advanced on base average. Now, of course, Cepeda is well known for his great offensive production at first base, but what isn't as advertised is his incredibly difficult journey to the MLB Hall of Fame. Just days before his professional debut, Orlando's father passed away at the age of 49 from a bad case of malaria. In 1961, Cepeda had a bad collision and his knee was never the same. He also had some bad relationship turmoil with his manager, Al Dark. He faced some racial prejudice from Dark, who thought that Cepeda was faking his knee injury because he didn't want to play. He also faced a 5-year-long position battle with fellow great Willie McCovey, which he lost, eventually forcing him to St. Louis. His injuries wore him down and eventually left him in a position where he could not compete. He also had some serious relationship problems, which caused him to be divorced twice, and of course, as mentioned in the intro, he was caught in possession of marijuana, sentenced to 5 years, but he only served 10 months in a prison in Puerto Rico. When he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, that 25 years later after his career, he said that he wasn't ready after he retired because he needed to do some work on himself. And he did just that, spending those 25 years as an ambassador and humanitarian for the Giants. Orlando Cepeda was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1999 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away June 28, 2024 at the age of 86 in Concord, California. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. Cubs legend Frank Chance once walked right up to opposing pitcher Joe McGinnity and threw a haymaker at him. Now, this quickly incited a riot at the Polo Grounds. Chance was such a fighter that old-school boxing legends Jim Corbett and John L. Sullivan both called Chance the greatest amateur brawler of all time. But it was this hard-nosed stubbornness that led Chance to becoming a successful 2-time World Series champion player-manager. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the first base leg of the famous Tinkers to Evers to Chance double play infield, Frank Chance. Chance was born September 9, 1876 in Fresno, California. Now, Chance actually never played any organized baseball until college at the University of California. He then transferred to Washington College in Irvington, California, and there he was noticed by Cubs outfielder Bill Lang, who was able to convince the Cubs to sign Chance sight unseen to the National League team. Frank Chance played in the MLB from 1898 to 1914 for the Cubs and Yankees. He bat and threw righty, he played first base, he bat .296 for his career average, scoring 798 runs with 1,274 hits, driving in 596 RBIs while swiping 403 bags. 46 WAR, .0357 WAR per game, 135 OPS plus, and a 397 advanced on base average. Frank Chance was most well known for his very stubborn and hard form of managing. He once told outfielder Solly Hoffman to postpone his own wedding until the offseason because Chance thought the bliss of marriage would distract Hoffman from baseball. He was also famous for throwing beer bottles at fans who were being unruly, or not unruly enough. It was also reported that he would fine his own players for shaking the opponent's hands, win or lose. But sometimes strict leadership is necessary for success, which Chance definitely attained, as he is the all-time Cubs leader for winning percentage as a manager. But Chance was no slouch at the plate. He is the all-time Cubs leader in steals. Now, he was plagued by injuries that were largely his fault, as he was hit many times in the head because he was crowding the plate. And funnily enough, he was actually let go from his position of player manager while in the hospital recovering from brain surgery while arguing with Charles Murphy. But nonetheless, he still made his way across the finish line, beaten, battered, and bruised into the MLB Hall of Fame. And in the same Hall of Fame class as Frank Chance were none other than the other two-thirds of the famous double play infield, Johnny Evers and Joe Tinker, because, of course, Frank Chance was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1946 via the Old Timers Committee. He passed away September 15th, 1924 at the age of 48 in Los Angeles, California. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. During his playing days, multiple newspapers called Oscar Charleston better than players like Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, and Rogers Hornsby. Scouts and coaches echoed the same sentiment. Even Honus Wagner said, "I've seen all the great players in the many years I've been around and have yet to see one any greater than Oscar Charleston." But is Charleston worth all that hype? Let's find out. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at potentially the greatest Negro League player of all time, the one, the only, Oscar Charleston. Charleston was born October 14, 1896 in Indianapolis, Indiana. He was given the middle name McKinley because his parents were Republicans and fans of the 25th president. When he was 15 years old, he lied about his age so that he could enlist in the army. He was then deployed to the Philippines and played ball there for the regimental team. And he did the same thing when it came time for World War I, lying about his age to stay consistent with previous reports. He was honorably discharged both times. He actually played for the Indianapolis ABCs before the founding of the Negro National League. And when the league was founded, he signed with those same ABCs, kicking off his MLB career. Oscar Charleston played in the MLB Negro Leagues from 1920 to 1941 for the ABCs, St. Louis Giants, Harrisburg Giants, Hilldale Club, Homestead Grays, Pittsburgh Crawfords, Toledo Crawfords, and the Philadelphia Stars. He bat and threw lefty. He largely played center field. He bat .365 for his career average, scoring 853 runs with 1,209 hits, driving at 855 RBIs while slugging 144 home runs. 48 WAR, .0523 WAR per game, 185 OPS plus, and a 483 advanced on base average. Oscar Charleston was most well known for his otherworldly offensive skill set. Through his first 6 seasons, Oscar Charleston has the same amount of seasons batting in the 400s as he does in the 300s. He has the 3rd highest advanced on base average of all time, ahead of guys like Lou Gehrig and Ty Cobb. He has the 3rd highest OPS plus of all time, ahead of guys like Rogers Hornsby and Mickey Mantle, and he has the 4th highest OPS of all time, ahead of guys like Barry Bonds and Jimmy Fox. Now I know he has a significantly smaller sample size than those guys, and say what you want about the competition in the Negro Leagues, but greatness is comparative to your competition. William G. Nunn of the Pittsburgh Courier said Charleston has the speed of Carey, the arm of Musial, the brains of McGraw, and the hitting ability of Hornsby. St. Louis Cardinal scout Benny Borgman said, "In my opinion, the greatest player I've ever seen was Oscar Charleston. When I say this, I'm not overlooking Ruth, Cobb, Gehrig, and all of them." In the end, Oscar Charleston has gone down as the greatest Negro League player of all time, only rivaled by one man. Oscar Charleston was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1976 via the Negro League Committee. He passed away October 5th, 1954 at the age of 57 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. Most people know Jack Chesbro as the man who threw away the pennant with a wild pitch in 1904. But that same year, he would break the record for the most wins in a single season in the modern era. Now, he was also known for throwing some pretty unique pitches, including touring around the league to show off his invention of the jump ball. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today, we look at the man who mastered the spitball, the Yankees' first great pitcher, Jack Chesbro. Chesbro was born June 5th, 1874 in North Adams, Massachusetts. His last name at birth was spelled like this and pronounced Cheeseboro, but he would become known as Chesbro because he would write his name that way, although he never legally changed it. In 1894, Chesbro and some of his bros would move to Middletown, New York, where they would play for the Asylums, who, you guessed it, were a team representing the state mental hospital. Not many people can say they got their start in professional sports in the nut house, but it was there that he got the nickname Happy Jack due to his positive disposition when working with patients. He would bounce around teams in 1895, eventually pitching semi-pro ball in Cooperstown, New York, where he would posthumously be enshrined 51 years later. But just 4 short years later, in 1899, he would get his first taste of the big leagues with the Pittsburgh Pirates. He was then traded to Louisville with a bunch of different players for Honus Wagner. But very shortly after the trade, the Louisville club would dissolve and Chesbro would go back to Pittsburgh, where he would officially begin his MLB career. Jack Chesbro played in the MLB from 1899 to 1909 for the Pirates, New York Highlanders, which are the Yankees, and the Red Sox. He bat and threw righty. He had a .268 ERA, a 1.153 WHIP, a career record of 198 and 132, and 1,265 strikeouts. 42.7 WAR, .133 WAR per 9 innings pitched, 110 ERA plus, and a 2.67 FIP. Now, Chesbro is most well known for his absolutely record-breaking 1904 season. Prior to that season, New York manager Clark Griffin and catcher Jim McGuire were not fans of the spitball, but in 1904 they allowed Chesbro to use it, and he quickly mastered it to absolute domination. He quickly became a workhorse, completing 48 of his 51 starts while amassing a staggering 454 and 2/3 innings pitched, and 28 of his starts came on less than 3 days of rest. He put up a monstrous 10.6 WAR while accumulating 41 wins, a record in the modern era of baseball. But unfortunately, in a critical 5-game series against the Boston Red Sox to end the season, Chesbro would throw a wild pitch that would allow the winning run to come across the plate, sealing the pennant for Boston. Chesbro tried to get cute with it the following year, inventing a pitch that that he claimed would revolutionize baseball, the jump ball. He promised to tour the league and show it off, but this was derailed due to arm pains that were more than likely caused by his spitball usage. But Chesbro still managed a few more good years en route to a trip to Cooperstown. Jack Chesbro was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1946 via the Old Timers Committee. He passed away November 6, 1931 at the age of 57 in Conway, Massachusetts. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball, you've been great, and I will see you next time. In 1899, Louisville Colonels owner and president Barney Dreyfuss orchestrated a trade to send Fred Clark to the Pirates to escape the soon-to-be extinct Colonels franchise. This move would prove to be otherworldly successful because not only was Clark good enough to enter the MLB Hall of Fame as a player, but he would also become the Pittsburgh Pirates' greatest manager of all time. But how did he do this? Let's find out. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at John McGraw's nemesis, the fearless, speedy player-manager, Fred Clark. Clark was born October 3rd, 1872, just southwest of Des Moines, Iowa in Winterset. Just a few years after Fred's birth, his father moved his family in a covered wagon to a farm in Cowley County, Kansas, and it was there that Clark became a hardcore baseball fan while watching the team in Des Moines. He would play amateur ball in 1889 and 90, but he turned professional in 1892 with the Nebraska State League. And a few years later, through some odd circumstances, including failing to claim land in the Cherokee Strip of what is now Oklahoma, Fred Clark found himself accepting an invitation to join the Louisville Colonels of the National League in 1894. Fred Clark played in the MLB from 1894 to 1915 for the Louisville Colonels and the Pittsburgh Pirates. He bat lefty and threw righty. He played left field. He bat .312 for his career average, scoring 1,622 runs with 2,678 hits, driving in 1,015 RBIs while stealing 509 bases. 68 WAR, .0303 WAR per game, 133 OPS plus, and a 393 advanced on base average. Now Fred Clark has some very good stats as a hitter. He is 7th all-time in triples with 223 baggers. He is also 35th all-time in stolen bases, ahead of guys like Ichiro and Roberto Alomar. He is one of the greatest Pirates hitters of all time. I mean, his name is littered all over their leaders page. But Clark is arguably more well known for his managerial success. He took on the role of player manager at the age of just 24 and never looked back. He wound up winning 4 pennants as a player manager, and he also won the 1909 World Series, coming back from a 3-1 deficit in that series. He is the Pirates' greatest manager of all time, leading the franchise in wins, winning percentage, and pennants. His managerial style included a never-say-die mentality that had a no-exceptions positivity attitude in the face of any adversity. In fact, many years after he retired, he was brought back as an assistant by Dreyfuss to inspire the 1925 Pirate squad, and he did just that as the 1925 Pirates would go on to win the World Series. And of course, he was the target of the infamous ABC affair, or the Great Pirate Mutiny, in which 3 players, including fellow Hall of Famer Max Carey, tried to get Clark kicked off the bench as an assistant. This vote failed and the 3 players were released. But nonetheless, Fred Clark has gone down as one of the greatest sports figures in Pittsburgh history. Fred Clark was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1945 via the Old Timers Committee. He passed away August 14th, 1960 at the age of 87 in Winfield, Kansas. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great. Here is your flag of the day. Leave your guess as to what country it is in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. Cleveland Spiders catcher Chief Zimmer called John Clarkson, quote, the greatest of all pitchers. That's nice, isn't it? No, it's crazy considering the fact that Zimmer caught Cy Young for over a decade and still said that statement. From having the 2nd most wins of all time to being in and out of asylums, John Clarkson is quite the baseball legend. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at half of the $20,000 battery, John Clarkson. Clarkson was born July 1st, 1861, just west of Boston, Massachusetts in Cambridge. And legend has it that he was born with his signature mustache. I'm just kidding, but he was born into a family of watchmakers and jewelers. And one of his dad's co-workers in the jeweler business just so happens to be one of baseball's founding fathers and the man of my profile picture, Harry Wright. Clarkson started playing amateur ball in 1880 in Boston. During his amateur days, he received some pitching advice from 19th century pitching legend and should-be Hall of Famer Tommy Bond. And 2 years later, in 1882, Clarkson's amateur team would play the National League Worcester team in an exhibition. And after the game, the Worcester manager somehow convinced Clarkson to join his team, kicking off his MLB career. John Clarkson played in the MLB from 1882 to 1894 for the Worcester Ruby Legs, Chicago White Stockings, which are the Cubs, Boston, which are the Braves, and the Cleveland Spiders. He bat and threw righty. He had a 2.81 ERA, a 1.209 WHIP, a career record of 328 and 178, and 1,978 strikeouts. 83.2 WAR, .165 WAR per 9 9 innings pitched, 133 ERA plus, and a 3.35 FIP. Now, Clarkson was most well known for the control and spin he was able to put on the ball. Former teammate Billy Sunday said that Clarkson, quote, could put more turns and twists into a ball than any pitcher I ever saw. Clarkson masterfully used his fastball and wide array of curveballs to try and get hitters out the fast way with weak contact, but he somehow managed to accidentally strike out 1,365 batters over a 5-year span. Pretty good for someone who's just trying to induce contact. Clarkson was a master at using every advantage he could get to try and get batters out, whether it was messing with his arm angle and delivery speed like Johnny Cueto, or wearing a massive belt buckle to try and shine the glare of the sun into the hitter's eyes. He was told on multiple occasions by umpires to lose the bling. But all those tactics, whether his skill or brains, worked very well, as he is 12th all-time in wins with 328. He owns 2 of the top 4 winningest seasons in MLB history. Little factoid for you, he has the most home runs of any 19th century pitcher with 24. After his playing days were over, he unfortunately turned heavily to drinking. This and other factors led to nervous breakdowns and him being committed to multiple mental hospitals. But regardless, the 5'10", 155-pound ace managed an incredible playing career. Don Clarkson was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1963 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away February 4th, 1909 at the age of 47 in Belmont, Massachusetts. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great. Here is your flag of the day. Leave your guess as to which country it could be down in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Everybody knows the Dodgers to be a powerhouse team, a blue blood of baseball. Well, they somehow could have had an even better history, as on February 19th, 1954, they signed the legendary Roberto Clemente. But for reasons that make absolutely no sense in hindsight, the Dodgers sent Clemente to the International League, which put him at risk of being drafted by another team. And exactly that happened, as the Dodgers would lose the Puerto Rican along with his 95 career WAR to the Pittsburgh Pirates the very next year. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the greatest Puerto Rican to ever set foot on a baseball field, Roberto Clemente. Clemente was born August 18, 1934 in Carolina, Puerto Rico, which is just east of San Juan. Thank you, Globe. He grew up watching Monty Irvin and many other stars play in Puerto Rico. Irvin and teammates used to give kids their bags so they could get into the stadiums for free, and among those kids was Roberto Clemente. In high school, he was a javelin thrower, which grew his already great arm strength to another level. He would sign with the Dodgers and play for their international team for a year before being drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates. Roberto Clemente played in the MLB from 1955 to 1972 for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He bat and threw righty, he played right field, he bat .317 for his career average, scoring 1,416 runs with exactly 3,000 hits, driving in 1,305 RBIs while winning 4 batting titles. 95 WAR, .0390 WAR per game, 130 OPS plus, and a .383 advanced on base average. Roberto Clemente was a legendary ball player. He is 25th all-time in WAR for position players, ahead of guys like Jimmy Fox, Cap Anson, and Ken Griffey Jr. He won 12 straight Gold Gloves from 1961 to 1972. He had an 8-season stretch of batting over .300 from 1960 to 1967, including all 4 of his batting title seasons. But Clemente was arguably more well known for his work off the field. He went back home to Puerto Rico almost every offseason. The only times he missed were to serve in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserves. He had dreams of creating a sports city in Puerto Rico where kids could play and learn skills that they would need in life. He was giving back all the way up until his untimely death in the waning hours of 1972. Clemente had just gotten back from managing a Puerto Rican team that was playing in Nicaragua when a massive earthquake hit Nicaragua. Clemente quickly scrambled funds and support, even working through Christmas to help out his fellow man. He even went on a plane to go help them, but shortly after 9 p.m. the plane crashed in the Atlantic, leaving all 5 passengers dead. Now, normally a player has to wait 5 years after retirement to be elected into the Hall of Fame, but a special exception was made for Clemente, and he received enough votes to get in just 1 year after his death. Roberto Clemente was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1973, winning 92.7% of the vote on a special election. He passed away December 31st, 1972 at the age of 38 off the coast of San Juan, Puerto Rico. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great. Here is your flag of the day. Leave your guess as to which country it could be in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. The 1910 American League batting title was coming down to the wire between legends Nap Lajoie and Ty Cobb. Cobb's manager decided to sit him with 2 games remaining in order to secure his very small lead, but the St. Louis manager, who hated Cobb and just so happened to be playing against Nap Lajoie, ordered his third baseman to play all the way back against the outfield grass. This resulted in Lajoie going 8 for 8 with 8 bunt singles down the third base line, giving him a 1-point lead in the batting race. However, the official MLB batting champion for 1910 is still Ty Cobb, despite him having that 1-point deficit. This is just one of many stories that make the Georgia Peach one of baseball's greatest players of all time. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at baseball's all-time leader in batting average, the one, the only, Ty Cobb. Cobb was born December 18th, 1886, just northeast of Atlanta in Narrows, Georgia. Cobb grew up loving baseball and desiring to play it professionally, a desire not shared by his father, who wanted the highly intelligent Ty to go into law or medicine. But his father eventually relented after Cobb received an offer to play semi-pro ball in Atlanta, saying, quote, "Go for it, and I want to tell you one thing, don't come home a failure." 1905 would be a year of ups and downs for Ty Cobb. Tragedy struck the Cobb family when his father went out at night and returned to his wife, who he suspected of cheating. He snuck into the bedroom, and exactly what happened next is unknown, but Ty Cobb's mother wound up shooting his father twice, killing him on the spot. The highs would come later that year as he was picked up via an option by the Detroit Tigers, kicking off his legendary MLB career. Ty Cobb played in the MLB from 1905 to 1928 for the Tigers and Athletics. He bat lefty and threw righty. He played center field. He bat .366 for his career average, scoring 2,245 runs with 4,189 hits, driving in 1,944 RBIs with 897 stolen bases, 151.4 WAR, .0499 WAR per game, 168 OPS plus, and a 455 advanced on base average. Ty Cobb is most well known for being perhaps the most aggressive and brazen player to ever play the game of baseball. From spiking and cutting home run Baker and receiving death threats for his slide, to getting into a fight with a hotel watchman and catching an attempted murder charge. Ty Cobb was quite the fighter, but he is also a top 5 player in MLB history. He is 6th all-time in wins above replacement among hitters and pitchers, and 4th when you take pitchers out. He is 2nd in offensive WAR by less than 3 points to Babe Ruth. He is 2nd all-time in hits and runs, 4th in stolen bases, 9th in RBIs, 6th in advanced on base average, and 3rd in times on base. He won 12 batting titles in a 13-year span, including 9 in a row. He has 9 200-hit seasons, which is 2nd all-time. Ty Cobb is one of the GOATs of baseball. Ty Cobb was elected into the Hall of Fame in the inaugural class in 1936, winning 98.2% of the vote on his first ballot. He passed away July 17th, 1961 at the age of 74 in Atlanta, Georgia. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great. Here is your flag of the day. Leave your guess as to which country it could be in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. Hall of Fame catcher Mickey Cochrane was seen as a role model during some of America's darkest times in the Great Depression. His fierce leadership and great personality helped take many citizens' minds off the severe poverty at the time. In fact, Mickey was such a popular name in the 1930s because of Cochrane's fame. One Oklahoman family was so inspired by Cochrane that they ended up naming their son Mickey on October 20th, 1931, and that family's last name, Mantle. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the first catcher ever elected into the MLB Hall of Fame, Mickey Cochrane. Cochrane was born April 6, 1903 in Bridgewater, Massachusetts, just 30 miles south of Boston. While he ended up playing baseball, Cochrane himself admitted that football was his passion and his best sport, but a living could hardly be made playing professional football in the 1920s, so baseball was his ticket to financial freedom. While still in college, he signed to play for Dover in the Class D Eastern Shore League, filling their most needed position, catcher. The following year, Cochrane would drop out of Boston University to play ball for Portland, and the following year he would join the Philadelphia Athletics of the American League. Mickey Cochrane played in the MLB from 1925 to 1937 for the Philadelphia Athletics and Detroit Tigers. He bat lefty and threw righty. He played catcher. He bat .320 for his career average, scoring 1,041 runs with 1,652 hits, driving in 830 RBIs while winning 3 World Series. 49.8 WAR, .0336 WAR per game, 129 OPS plus, and a 416 advanced on base average. Now, Cochrane was most well known for his success as a leader. He no doubt picked up some tips while playing for Connie Mack for the first 9 years of his career. He also picked up a few tricks playing with Ty Cobb in the twilight of his career. But it was in Detroit where he would shine as a player-manager, leading the Tigers to back-to-back pennants in 1934 and 35 while leading them to their first ever World Series title. Mickey Cochrane, inspired millions in one of the gloomiest eras in American history. And it was with that charming gusto that he landed himself in the MLB Hall of Fame. Mickey Cochran was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1947, winning 79.5% of the vote on his 6th ballot. He passed away June 28, 1962 at the age of 59 in Lake Forest, Illinois. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great. Here is your flag of the day. Leave your guess as to which country it could be in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. Many legends of the entertainment business take on aliases to protect things important to them. Bruce Wayne as Batman, Peter Parker as Spider-Man, and Eddie Collins as... Well, that can't be right. No, it actually is, because in order to hide his professional baseball activities from Columbia University, the 19-year-old Collins came up with the name Eddie T. Sullivan in order to play professional baseball and play for the university at the same time. Unfortunately for the baseball world, Collins caught baseball fever and never recovered. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at one of the greatest infielders of all time, cocky Eddie Collins. Collins was born May 2nd, 1887 in Millerton, New York, which is just off the border of Connecticut. He started playing ball at Irving Prep School in Tarrytown in 1895. He would graduate from there in 1903 and enroll in the Ivy League school of Columbia University. While attending such a distinguished university, he became quite intelligent, and he knew that he was the smartest player on the baseball diamond, earning his nickname of Cocky. He would pick up a few small contracts here and there to play semi-pro ball, which actually made him ineligible for Columbia in 1907. He was eventually noticed by Philadelphia A's pitcher Andy Coakley, who was actually on his honeymoon at the time. Coakley told manager Connie Mack, who inquired further and eventually signed him after Collins made him promise not to send him to the minor leagues. Eddie Collins played in the MLB from 1906 to 1930 for the Athletics and White Sox. Bat lefty and threw righty, he played second base. He bat .333 for his career average, scoring 1,821 runs with 3,315 hits, driving in 1,299 RBIs with 741 stolen bases. 124.2 WAR, .0439 WAR per game, 142 OPS plus, and a .419 advanced on-base average. Eddie Collins was most well known for his intelligence and confidence. He would intently study pitchers, how they would hold the ball with different pitches, and how they delivered the ball. He wasn't the fastest guy, but he would also study the pitcher's hips and feet in order to get great leads and jumps. And it worked pretty well, as he is 8th all-time in stolen bases. He was also an incredible bunter, as he is the all-time leader in sacrifice hits. In fact, his first major league hit was a bunt single off of Hall of Famer Ed Walsh. He is the second best second baseman and third best infielder of all time according to WAR. He leads all qualified second basemen in hits and steals, while being second in runs, walks, and on-base percentage. He was actually the captain of the most infamous team in history, the 1919 White Sox. However, he was a part of the Clean Sox, who did not participate in the scandal. In fact, Collins was suspicious from the first inning of Game 1, saying, quote, "If the gamblers didn't have Buck Weaver and Eddie Saccott in their pocket, then I don't know a thing about baseball." Eddie Collins was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1939, winning 77.7% of the vote on his 4th ballot. He passed away March 25th, 1951 at the age of 63 in Boston, Massachusetts. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great. Here is your flag of the day. Leave your guess as to which country it could be in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. Not only was Jimmy Collins the first third baseman elected into the Hall of Fame and the first manager of the Boston Red Sox franchise, he also led the team as a player manager and won the inaugural World Series title in 1903. An elite defender at the hot corner and an above average hitter. But he was also quite the businessman and financier, as he used his earnings in baseball to start a real estate business that funded his after baseball life. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And for the 50th episode of Learn a Hall of Famer, we take a look at the slick fielding third baseman, Jimmy Collins. Collins was born January 16, 1870 in Niagara Falls, New York, which is just north of Buffalo. He graduated from St. Joseph's College, acquiring a business education with a degree in commercial studies, which would prove quite useful in his life. He played for Irish American amateur teams in 1891 and 1892. And in 1893, he was offered to play for the Buffalo minor league franchise, an offer which he accepted, leaving his secure job at the rail yard. And 2 years later, the Boston team of the National League would purchase him for $500. After struggling mightily in the outfield for Boston, he was then sold with a recall option to the last place Louisville Colonels, where one Dan Bruthers gave the advice to move Collins to third base. He performed so well there that Boston exercised their recall option, bringing him back to the city, where he would stick for the majority of his career. Jimmy Collins played in the MLB from 1895 to 1908 for Boston, which is the Braves franchise, the Louisville Colonels, Boston Americans, which is the Red Sox franchise, and the Philadelphia Athletics. He bat and threw righty. He played third base. He bat .294 for his career average, scoring 1,055 runs with 1,009 999 hits, driving in 983 RBIs with 16.8 defensive WAR, 53.3 WAR, .0309 WAR per game, 113 OPS plus, and a 359 advanced on base average. Jimmy Collins was most well known for his defensive and financial skills. After the 1900 season, Collins was unhappy with his contract and decided to take the risk and jump leagues to the newly founded American League as the player, manager, and captain of the Boston Americans. And to quote Collins himself, "I saw a chance to better myself and took it." But for Collins, it actually wasn't as big of a risk because he was building up his real estate business in the background and had that to fall back on. Not only did this result in a bigger payday for Collins, but he also led the Red Sox to 2 pennants and the first ever official World Series title. He manned the hot corner to the 11th most defensive WAR at that position and the 6th most triples there. Collins used his business background, which influenced his managerial style, and on top of his good player stats, landed him in the MLB Hall of Fame. Jimmy Collins was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1945 via the Old Timers Committee. He passed away March 6, 1943 at the age of 73 in Buffalo, New York. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great. Here is your flag of the day. Leave your guess as to which country it could be in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. When Earl Combs reported to the Yankees in 1924, his manager Miller Huggins sat him down to discuss his role on the team. Now, Combs was a devout believer who read his Bible constantly. So, when Huggins changed his nickname from the mail carrier to the waiter, Combs probably got some shades of Genesis 17:5 when God changed Abram's name to Abraham. Now, Combs didn't go on to be the father of a multitude of nations, but he did go on to be one of the greatest leadoff hitters in baseball history. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history, so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at one of the most elite setup men in baseball history, Earl Combs. Combs was born May 14, 1899 in Pebworth, Kentucky, which is just southeast of Lexington. He attended what is now Eastern Kentucky University in hopes of being a school teacher, a trade that will come up in a big way after he retires. And somehow he didn't get the memo to be a professional baseball player after batting a modest, .591 his senior year in college. He found out he could make more money as a baseball player sometime after beginning his teaching career, so he dedicated his life to that instead. He signed with the Louisville Colonels and bat .344 and .380 in back-to-back seasons, performances good enough for the New York Yankees to purchase him in 1924. Earl Combs played in the MLB from 1924 to 1935 for the New York Yankees. He bat lefty and threw righty, he played center field, he bat .325 for his career average, scoring 1,186 runs with 1,866 hits, driving in 633 RBIs with 154 triples, 45 WAR, .0309 WAR per game, 125 OPS plus, and a 397 advanced on base average. Earl Combs was most well known for his humility and toughness. His manager Miller Huggins was a great leadoff hitter in his time as a player and saw great leadoff potential in Combs. So he told Combs, who was known for his base stealing at the time, to not worry about stealing bases and to focus on getting on base by any means necessary and letting the big guns like Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig drive him in. He set aside any ego and obliged and became one of the greatest setup men in baseball history. In the famous 27 Yankees season, he got 231 hits, a record that would stand for 59 years until Don Mattingly would break it. He was also an elite triples threat with great speed. Almost any time he hit a ball in the gap that went to the wall, odds are Combs would be standing on third by the time the ball got in. But he was also incredibly tough. In 1934, Combs fractured his skull and suffered shoulder and knee injuries while crashing into the outfield wall. Nowadays, that's a goodbye career injury, but for Combs, no, he returned to the team the very next season. He was so loved by the fans at Yankee Stadium that the right field section of fans took up a collection and bought him a gold watch. After his career was over, he was charged with teaching an up-and-coming center fielder that the Yankees had just purchased from the San Francisco Seals. But who was this guy? I don't know, just some guy that married Marilyn Monroe? Earl Combs was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1970 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away July 21st, 1976 at the age of 77 in Richmond, Kentucky. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great. Here is your flag of the day. Leave your guess as to which country it could be in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. Everybody knows the popular lineage of the home run king in baseball. The original Babe Ruth, who then handed the crown to Hank Aaron, and now Barry Bonds is reigning. But what about before Babe Ruth? Who was the home run king before the great Bambino? Well, that's the man that we're looking at today. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history, so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today, we look at a bona fide top 3 player from the 19th century, Roger Connor. Connor was born July 1st, 1857 in Waterbury, Connecticut, Connecticut, which is about 100 miles northeast of New York City. His family of Irish immigrants struggled to make a living, as most did, but Roger fell in love with baseball and would never let go of it. He moved to New York when he was 14 years old to do odd jobs and try and build his baseball resume. He would move back home after the passing of his father and join the Waterbury Monitors, a local semi-pro team. And after bumping up to a minor league team, he caught the attention of the future National League Troy Trojans manager Bob Ferguson. And in 1880, Connor and 4 future Hall of Famers Dan Bruthers, Tim Keefe, Buck Ewing, and Mickey Welch would join the Troy Trojans. And funnily enough, he would meet his future wife at a shirt factory in Troy, where he was sent because the 6'3", 220-pound Roger Connor was too big for any of the jerseys that the Trojans had. Roger Connor played in the MLB from 1880 to 1897 for the Troy Trojans, New York Giants, Philadelphia Phillies, and the St. Louis Browns of the Cardinals franchise. He switch hit and threw righty. He played first base. He batted .316 for his career average, scoring 1,620 runs with 2,467 hits, driving in 1,323 RBIs with 138 home runs. 84.3 WAR, .0422 WAR per game, 153 OPS plus, and a .407 advanced on-base average. After moving teams from Troy to New York, he would be a key factor in the conception of the name Giants, a name that the franchise would still be using 141 years later. Now, Roger Connor was most well known for his crazy offensive production. As mentioned in the intro, he held the home run crown for 24 years after he retired until Babe Ruth took it in 1921. He has the 34th highest OPS plus in MLB history with his 153 mark. He also has the 5th most triples in baseball history. Connor is the 10th best Giant in franchise history, ahead of guys like Buster Posey and Mickey Welch. He is the 5th best first baseman in baseball history according to WAR and Jaws. That's ahead of guys like Jeff Bagwell, Frank Thomas, and Jim Thome. But Connor was also a sneaky good base runner and stealer, mostly due to the fact that no one wanted to get in the way of the big burly man barreling towards second and third base, but he was still a fleet-footed runner. It may have took 79 years after his final at-bat, but Roger Connor finally made it into the Hall of Fame. Roger Connor was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1976 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away January 4th, 1931 at the age of 73, where he was born in Waterbury, Connecticut. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great. Here's your flag of the day. Leave your guess as to which country it could be in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. By the year 1927, the Negro Leagues had cut player pay and morale was at an all-time low, so they threatened players who wanted a contract jump with a 5-year ban to try and limit their options. But Andy Cooper decided to call the league's bluff and go on a barnstorming tour to Japan later that year with an all-star team that included fellow Hall of Famer Biz Mackey. And that bluff call worked, as upon his return he received only a 30-day suspension and a $200 fine. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at one of the pitching greats of the Negro Leagues, Andy Cooper. Cooper was born April 24th, 1897 in Waco, Texas. Unfortunately, not much is known about his youth other than his schooling, where he attended A.J. Moore High School. He would then continue his education at Paul Quinn College. And in 1920, he would begin his professional baseball career, signing with the Detroit Stars of the Negro National League. Andy Cooper played in the Negro Leagues from 1920 to 1939 for the Detroit Stars, Kansas City Monarchs, and Chicago American Giants. He bat righty and threw lefty. He had a 3.58 ERA, a 1.211 whip, a career record of 118 and 64 and 719 strikeouts, 25.9 WAR, .145 WAR per 9 innings pitched, 122 ERA plus, and a 2.4 FIP. Andy Cooper was most well known for his managerial success and pitching versatility. Cooper was the manager for the Kansas City Monarchs from 1937 to 1940. During that stretch, the Monarchs finished first every year and won the pennant 3 times in 4 tries. But also on the mound, Cooper was quite good. He is the all-time saves leader amongst the Negro Leagues. He was also known for his great ability to change speeds with the same pitches, as well as his elite pickoff move. Sure, he isn't elite compared to today's pitchers and to pitchers of the American and National Leagues back then, but greatness is comparative to your competition. And he was pretty good compared to his competition with his 122 ERA+. He was finally recognized in the rebirth of the Negro League Committee in 2006, along with 15 other players and pioneers of the Negro Leagues. Andy Cooper was elected into the Hall of Fame in 2006 via the Negro League Committee. He passed away June 3rd, 1941 at the age of 44 in his hometown of Waco, Texas. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great. Here is your flag of the day. Leave your guess as to which country it could be in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. While pitching in Atlantic City, Stan Coveleski caught the attention of Philadelphia A's manager Connie Mack, who signed him to play for his team. But Mack believed Coveleski needed more refining, so he sent him cross-country to Spokane to play for the Northwestern League, believing that he had a gentleman's agreement for the rights to Coveleski. But while pitching in Spokane, Coveleski was traded to Portland of the Pacific Coast League, who now had the rights to Coveleski. And apparently all that Connie Mack received for the future Hall of Famer was a box of red apples and a note letting him know that his rights to Coveleski had expired. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the man with perhaps the greatest spitball in MLB history, Stan Coveleski. Coveleski was born July 13, 1889 in Shamokin, Pennsylvania, which is just northeast of Harrisburg. He grew up in a coal mining family and region and acquired his strength by carrying timber to the coal mines. And he gained his accuracy while throwing rocks at tin cans, which he claimed he could hit blindfolded. And it was actually doing that activity that got Coveleski recognized by a school teacher who asked him to pitch for the school team. Later on, he would sign with the Lancaster team of the Tri-State League and perform extremely well there. And a few years later, he would be noticed by Connie Mack, who would sign him and then send him to Washington to further develop. And 4 years later, he would return to the MLB to play for the Cleveland Indians. Stan Coveleski played in the MLB in 1912, then from 1916 to 1928 for the Athletics, Indians, Senators, and Yankees. He bat and threw righty. He had a 2.89 ERA, a 1.251 FIP, a career record of 215 and 142 and 981 strikeouts, 61.9 WAR, .181 WAR per 9 innings pitched, 127 ERA plus, and a 3.13 FIP. Stan Coveleski was most well known for his dominance in the late 1910s and early 1920s. In an era largely dominated by the big train, Coveleski finished in the top 3 in pitching WAR from 1917 to 1921, and from 1917 to 1925 he averaged 6.8 WAR, 19.7 wins, a 2.75 ERA, and 136 ERA plus. Speaking of ERA plus, his 127 mark is tied for 57th all-time and is ahead of guys like Steve Carlton, Nolan Ryan, and Burt Blyleven. He had 5 seasons of at least 7 WAR, and over half his seasons were over 6 WAR. Now, he didn't strike out a ton of people. In fact, he credited his success to his control and efficiency on the mound. But for someone who started playing in the MLB really when he was 26 years old, I think we can all agree that Stan Coveleski had himself a great career. Stan Coveleski was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1969 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away March 20th, 1984 at the age of 94 in South Bend, Indiana. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great. Here is your flag of the day. Leave your guess as to which country it can be in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. In 1899, the 19-year-old right fielder Sam Crawford's contract was sold to the Cincinnati Reds, making him the youngest player in the league at the time of his debut. And over the next 18 years, the powerful lefty would spend his time blasting line drives into the cavernous gaps in the ballparks of the early 20th century, accumulating the most triples in MLB history. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today, we look at one of the most consistently great players of the 20th century, Sam Crawford. Wahoo Sam was appropriately born April 18, 1880 in Wahoo, Nebraska, just west of Omaha. His father actually fought in the Civil War and was a very successful businessman in many different ventures. Sam, however, forsook his education after the 5th grade in order to pursue a barber apprenticeship, and it was that job that he credited his renowned strength for, saying he acquired his strength by, quote, whacking the wind-whipped whiskers of Wahoo. He would start playing baseball and touring with a team from Wahoo, traveling by lumber wagon behind a team of horses that had a tent and a stove. He played for a few more leagues, including a team in Ontario, Canada, before landing at Grand Rapids of the Western League. And on September 10, 1899, Sam Crawford would be sold to the Cincinnati Reds to embark on his Hall of Fame career in the major leagues. Sam Crawford played in the MLB from 1899 to 1917 for the Cincinnati Reds and Detroit Tigers. He bat and threw lefty. He played right field. He bat .309 for his career average, scoring 1,391 runs with 2,961 hits, driving in 1,523 RBIs with 309 triples, 75.3 WAR, .0299 WAR per game, 144 OPS plus, and a 392 advanced on base average. Sam Crawford was most well known for his powerful plate presence. According to multiple sources on the Society for American Baseball Research's player biography on Crawford, he was widely regarded as the strongest hitter of his day. He never led the league in slugging percentage, but he finished inside the top 10 every year but one from 1901 to 1915, showing that he was also one of the most consistent studs of his era. He also led the league in triples 6 times during that stretch and never played played less than 131 games and only got below 4 WAR 3 times in those seasons. He also has the 14th highest qualifying OPS plus among all right fielders in history. He also has the most ever recorded inside the park home runs in a single season with 12 in 1901. And of course, what he is most famous for statistically is his all-time lead in triples with 309, beating out second place and 13-year teammate of Crawford's Ty Cobb by 14. Sam Crawford was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1957 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away June 15, 1968 at the age of 88 in Hollywood, California. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great. Here is your flag of the day. Leave your guess as to which country it could be in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. Joe Cronin might be one of the least known important figures in baseball history. A Hall of Fame player-manager, he is the youngest manager of the World Series ever at 26 years old, the winningest manager ever for the Red Sox franchise. He held the titles of star player, player-manager, general manager, vice president, treasurer, American League president, and was almost the commissioner of baseball on 2 separate occasions. Joe Cronin gave his life to baseball, and today, let's see what he was able to accomplish in his near 50 years in the MLB. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at perhaps the most important figure in Red Sox franchise history, Joe Cronin. Cronin was born October 12, 1906 in San Francisco, California, just 6 months before the earthquake that rocked the city. He grew up playing multiple sports, even capturing the San Francisco Boys City Tennis Championship in 1920. But baseball was his first love. He even played for semi-pro teams during the summers in between his years in high school. And in 1924, he would pass up an opportunity to play for the San Francisco Seals in favor of an offer from the Pittsburgh Pirates of the National League. Joe Cronin played in the MLB from 1926 to 1945 for the Pirates, Senators, and Red Sox. He bat and threw righty. He played shortstop. He bat .301 for his career average, scoring 1,233 runs with 2,285 hits, driving in 1,424 RBIs with 170 home runs, 64.8 WAR, .0256 WAR per game, 119 OPS plus, and a 390 advanced on base average. Joe Cronin was most well known for his leadership roles. When he was just 26 years old, he replaced the Senators legend Walter Johnson as the manager and led the team to the World Series after beating Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and the Yankees in the pennant. He constantly faced issues in his managerial career, with veterans despising him for his youth and his large contract. And no greater offender can be found than Lefty Grove, who openly and on numerous occasions blasted Cronin to the media, and would very much so make his frustrations known while pitching when Cronin would make an error. But nonetheless, Cronin found great success as a manager, as he still has the most wins in Red Sox managerial history at 1,071 wins. He managed greats like the aforementioned Lefty Grove, Jimmy Fox, and Ted Williams. He would then move up to general manager, where he would preside for 11 years, and eventually would become the league president of the American League until 1973. All in all, Joe Cronin has gone down as perhaps the most important man in Red Sox franchise history. Joe Cronin was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1956, winning 78.8% of the vote on his 10th ballot. He passed away September 7th, 1984 at the age of 77 in Barnstable, Massachusetts. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great. Here's your flag of the day. Leave your guess as to which country it could be in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. How do you pronounce this name right here? Now, on this channel, I've become known for my many mispronunciations of both cities and names. It was around this time that Bill V. Carey was born January 11th, 1890 in Terre Haute, Indiana. But this one I'm positive is right, even though it sounds wrong. It is Kai Kyler. He acquired the moniker Kai in the minor leagues when a fly ball was hit to him. Both the shortstop and the second baseman would yell Kai one after the other. So he put the two together and the nickname Kai stuck. Welcome back to Learn a Hall of Famer, a series where I go over every MLB Hall of Famer in alphabetical order, giving you some of their stats and some history so we can all learn more about the greats of baseball. And today we look at the final letter C Hall of Famer, Kai Kyler. Hazen Kyler was born August 30th, 1898 in Harrisville, Michigan, just off the coast of Lake Huron. At Harrisville High School, he played baseball, basketball, football, and ran track. He actually graduated as the valedictorian of his class of 5 people. Now that I think about it, how do you play baseball or football with only 5 people? He actually served in Company A of the 48th Infantry Regiment during World War I, but was never deployed to France. After that, Kyler performed so well with local Michigan teams that he attracted the attention of the player-manager for the Tigers, Ty Cobb, who wanted to sign the young prospect. But the Pirates beat the Tigers to Kyler and signed him for a reported $2,500 in 1921. Kai Kyler played in the MLB from 1921 to 1938 for the Pirates, Cubs, Reds, and Dodgers. Dodgers. He bat and threw righty. He played all three outfield positions. He bat .321 for his career average, scoring 1,305 runs with 2,299 hits, driving in 1,065 RBIs with 328 steals, 48.1 WAR, .0256 WAR per game, 125 OPS plus, and a 391 advanced on base average. Kyler was most well known for his late game heroics in Game 7 of the 1925 World Series. After being down 3-1, the Pirates battled back against the Senators to force a Game 7. In what was called a quote, rain-soaked, furious, dramatic struggle, Kyler stepped up to the plate with the bases loaded in the bottom of the 8th against the greatest pitcher of all time, Walter Johnson. The score was 7-all, and Kyler crushed a pitch down the right field line. Everyone thought it was going to leave the yard, but it fell short and bounced into a tarp and was called a ground rule double. But those two runs that scored were the dagger as the Pirates felled the Senators 9-7 as Pittsburgh completed their comeback. Kai Kyler was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1968 via the Veterans Committee. He passed away February 11th, 1950 at the age of 51 in Ann Arbor, Michigan. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to class. I've been Professor Baseball. You've been great. Here is your flag of the day. Leave your guess as to which country it could be in the comments down below, and I will see you next time.